No, if you treat it like any other career, like that you would get a degree for, and you're like, okay, first 4 years, I'm learning.
Yeah.
Like the first, what is it? Like 6 months, you go to beauty school, depending on your state, I guess. Then the next 3.5 years after that, if you're just like, okay, I'm making some money, but I'm like learning and I'm improving and I'm like trying to get better. Then after those 4 years, you are going to be way farther than the people who are just graduating college, who spent the last 4 years just taking classes and not actually like working in a business. Like if you go to a beauty school and then you get a job at a salon straight out of beauty school, you work there for like a year maybe, and then you move on and you start your own business. Well, now you're already 2.5 years into running your business. Whereas all the people who like went to college, they're just now graduating. They're just now getting started in their field, and they're getting entry level positions in their field. Whereas you could be, after 2.5 years of like running your business, if you are spending that whole time thinking about like, okay, I want to be like learning and getting better this whole time, you're going to be like miles and miles ahead. So the way they work is they just train it to understand language in like a statistical way. Like it basically, the way these language models work, they're called large language models, is what like ChatGPT and all these really successful models are. They're large language models. And basically what they do is they teach it statistically, like if there is a string of words, which is what a sentence is, then it will statistically, like it will print out the most likely string of words to follow that. And that's all it's doing. So if you ask it a question, statistically, the most likely thing to follow the question would be the answer for the question. And because it's trained on such massive, like such massive amounts of data that like we as humans can't even comprehend it, it is really good at like giving answers that sound really, really believable. But what happens is that it is not trained on providing true answers. So the answers it gives a lot of times will be true, but sometimes won't be. And if you aren't very, very, if you don't have a very, very clear understanding of exactly what it's talking about, and you're using it, like an obvious application for us is like, we could say, hey, help me write this ebook. And this is what I want the ebook to be about. And they can write out, like, you can say, write this ebook, and then it'll write it. But then there's going to be a ton of things in there that are wrong. And if you aren't very, very familiar with what you're writing and the topic you're writing about, you won't catch that. And so it can be very dangerous to use. And that's one of the reasons we haven't been like, oh, use it to write your Instagram captions. Because it's like, if you ask it to write an Instagram caption about like aftercare for your lashes, like it could do a really good job, and it could write you out something like that could be a good starting point to like brainstorm. But odds are there's going to be something in there that's wrong, that if you don't catch that, then you're just putting out misinformation that no one wants. What do we got next? Start bookkeeping.
Ooh.
You should. You should. Here, listen to me. Listen to me right now. You should be bookkeeping. I know it sucks. I know it's so boring.
I hate it.
It's so boring. It sucks. But when you get to the end of the year, you get to next March, and you have to do your taxes, you're going to be so happy that you did. I'm talking to myself right now also. Because
this is exclusively for Elliott.
I hate bookkeeping. I hate doing it so much. It's just every time. I do it at the end of every month. Everyone's like, our father-in-law,
our father Paul,
Madison's dad Paul. He's like, I do my bookkeeping end of every week. I'm like, Paul,
I get it.
I cannot.
My dad's a business baddie, and he is the most organized person I know.
He is, and I can't be quite there. I'm not at Paul's level. But
and anytime I call my dad for like a little victory, I'm like, oh my gosh, we did this, or we sold this, or whatever. He'll be like, are you keeping good books? Are you bookkeeping? And I'm
every
like,
time. He's like, how's your books? And I'm like, but I do them end of every month.
Yes.
And I'm glad I do, even though I hate doing it. And you should too.
Yeah.
I know that it's the most boring thing in the whole world. And if you're like someone who you don't mind bookkeeping, freaking, you are a superhero. But please, if you're a lash artist, you're not doing your books, just do them. That businesses either have to grow or they'll die. And like taking that mindset that like if I'm not growing the business, I'm doing a disservice to the business, and
like
I'm like,
your business is never just like staying stagnant. It's either growing or it's like
And so like
actively not growing.
you have to do everything you can. Like business isn't easy. And like if you're like letting things slide because you're like, like I'm fine, then you're like, there's 100 other businesses out there that are not going to let things slide, and you're just going to get like run over by them. And so like you have to push hard to like get your business to actually succeed. And that doesn't mean like you're enemies with your customers. Like you have to treat your customers like the best people in the world, and like you have to be super kind to everyone you come in contact with, and you have to like be a really good person throughout it. And after all that, like the inherent parts of the industry that are good, I think another thing that really can help you, and it has helped us stay like really motivated and like keep working and keep striving to get better, is setting very real goals that are like tangible and also achievable in like the next 1 to 2 years. Like one of the things that has helped keep me really motivated, and oftentimes shorter than that, is we will set like very real goals that we're like, okay, right now, this is the goal that we're working towards. And this goal is going to pay off in like 6 months, a year, maybe 2 years. But that can be like kind of more abstract and harder to wrap your head around. I like having it be like just a couple months from now. I think like as a consumer, if you understand like what people mean when they're saying like I'm a 7-figure beauty business owner, like it'll make you a much more like knowledgeable consumer, and it'll help you make better decisions of who to listen to, where to put your money. Like if you understand actually like what they're saying, and if you understand like what the meanings behind it could be, you'll be able to understand like when things are adding up, when things aren't. Like you can kind of figure out who the real people and who the fakes are. So number one thing that it could mean if someone is saying that they are a 7-figure beauty business owner, it's a very vague term. So there's like a bunch of different possible meanings. It could mean that they're doing over $1 million in profit per year, but probably not. So generally, if someone is profiting, which a lot of times when people say that, they're hoping that you think that they're making $1 million a year profit, which 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, they're not. And the reason is because if someone was making $1 million profit from their business, like $1 million per year was going into their bank account for them to keep, they would be calling themselves like an 8-figure beauty business owner, because their business would be worth far over $1 million, because businesses are valued at a multiple of what they earn. So it's probably not that. And they, if someone was making over $1 million, they did at the very least be calling themselves like a multi-7-figure beauty business owner or something like that. So it just doesn't mean that. So just know that off the bat. The second thing it could mean is over $1 million gross revenue. Now, this is going to be a lot of people who say like, we own a 7-figure beauty business. This is where we're at right now. So we are like in this chunk. I would say this is probably the majority of people who are like talking about these terms, where so that basically means every year you are collecting from people are giving you over $1 million total, which would be break down to like over $87,000 a month. And so if you're getting over $87,000 gross receipts, so gross receipts is just the money you're taking in, then you would have a gross revenue of over $1 million a year. Now, gross is going to be very different from what you keep at the end. I remember gross because it's gross because you can't take it home. So I'm like, ew. Ew, I wish I could take this home. Why can't I take it home? That's how I remember it.
When it was being explained to me in like high school or something.
Yeah, you're like, gross. Why can't I bring this home? And the so then that's gross. Then you have net profit off of that. And so net profit off of that is going to be like the actual profit of the business. And so that's generally, for the majority of businesses, going to be far less than $1 million. So say you are, and it really depends, the way it breaks down really depends on the type of business that you're running. Everyone who is a lash artist, everyone in general, anyone who is a person living in America should have an emergency fund. Or not even America. My Australian girlies, you need an emergency fund too. UK babes, you need an emergency fund too.
Emergencies are universal. They can happen to anyone.
They could happen to anyone, even people in Canada. Yeah. So everyone needs an emergency fund. I recommend, if for like lash artists specifically, it should be a little bigger than someone with like a regular job, just because there are like hazards of being a lash artist that like if you break your wrist, like you physically can't work. If you have an office job and you break a wrist, like you'll be out for a few days, but you can go back to work. But if you're a lash artist, like one of your fingers goes, like you're out. You lose the wrong finger, you're done for. So have like 3 to 6 months. I would recommend as close to 6 months as you can get of an emergency fund. Just, it doesn't have to be 6 months of you like of your current spend, because if you have an emergency and you have to stop working, like you can budget a little tighter. But have like minimum, like you could survive for 6 months. Like you'll pay your rent, you could live, you could buy food. Maybe you can't drive a ton, but you can still keep your car, you know. You're tight, but you're still doing all right. Yeah. You're going to be much better off spending all your time focusing on getting really good at one thing than focusing all your time on getting okay at a bunch of things. And the reason, and most people get okay at a bunch of things because, one, it's easier to get okay at things than it is to get really good at things.
Oh, yeah.
Even if you're getting okay at a bunch of things. But the other thing is too, is it's scarier to specialize, because like a lot of people feel, and it's a very natural thing to feel, that like, oh, if I only do one thing, then I will only attract like a certain type of clientele, and I'm like limiting my options for the future. Mm-hmm. But it's like, it's understandable why people would feel that way, because it makes sense. When you think about it, it's like, oh, well, I only would attract clients who want this sort of thing. But the thing is, like, there's enough clients out there that want every specific thing that like if you specialize in something and get really good and you're the best at that thing, and then people seek you out for that thing, you're going to be much better off. Or if you do something kind of unique in your business where you that you could teach other people in like a video, you could throw it up on Teachable, you know, you can make a little online course sort of thing. You can sell it for whatever you want. People will buy it. It's super easy. Like there's so many ways that you can just start selling your knowledge and the things that you've made online. Yeah. Like it's a great way to make a little extra income, especially if it's something where you really like a particular part of your job, or you are kind of starting to specialize in something where you're maybe really good at mapping your clients, or you're really good at the like client experience. You can make a little video course on like how to provide a great client experience.
Yeah.
And then you can don't sell it for a ton, sell it for like 30, 40, 50 bucks, maybe $100 if it's like a bigger course.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can easily start making like an extra $1,000 a month, a couple $100 a month. Like it's not going to be huge at first, especially if you don't have like a really big online following, or you're not running ads or getting like way more complicated with it, but you can easily start bringing in an extra just a couple $100 a month just from something that you made one time. You put it up, you talk about it every once in a while. It's a great little source of income.
Yeah.
It's that businesses either have to grow or they'll die. And like taking that mindset that like if I'm not growing the business, I'm doing a disservice to the business. And
like,
I'm like,
your business is never just like staying stagnant. It's either growing or it's like,
and so like
actively not growing.
You have to do everything you can. Like business isn't easy. And like if you're like letting things slide because you're like, like I'm fine, then you're like, there's 100 other businesses out there that are not going to let things slide, and you're just going to get like run over by them. And so like you have to push hard to like get your business to actually succeed. And that doesn't mean like you're enemies with your customers. Like you have to treat your customers like the best people in the world. And like you have to be super kind to everyone you come in contact with. And you have to like be a really good person throughout it. And that's the best way to succeed. But like you can't be a pushover it. So the next kind of level of risk that you can kind of take on, I see it as is doing something like hiring an employee. Like say you are a lash artist and you're fully booked, and you're like, okay, how do I expand from here? I'm fully booked. I'm doing well. How do I keep scaling up? One thing that probably every artist has thought of once they've gotten to that point in their career is, oh, I should hire an employee to take some of my clients, and then, you know, I could take potentially twice as many clients, and then I'm just paying them a portion of what the clients are making. And one thing that I think is another kind of universal truth about risk versus return is the more creative you get with your vehicle, the better your risk versus return ratio can be. So what I mean by that is if you are moving into a vehicle, if you're choosing to invest in a vehicle that is not super unique, it's something that maybe a lot of people have thought of, or it's something that kind of everyone does, or it's very commonly done, the risk reward ratio, the amount of reward you could get for a certain amount of risk is going to be lower, because if a ton of people have done it and a ton of people are doing the same thing and they don't have a ton of stuff to differentiate what they're doing, they're all going to differentiate themselves by price, and that crushes the margins of whatever you're doing. So if you are moving into a vehicle that is not as creative, just know that the margins likely aren't going to be as good, because it's something that a lot of other people have thought to do, and you're going to be competing with all of them on price. So for something like hiring an employee, it's not an extremely creative vehicle. So it's likely not going to be extremely profitable. Your business should be profiting. Obviously, we all know that.
I mean, I'm amazed. Like, a lot of my students, they don't talk about like profit a lot.
Yeah, they talk about top line. They're like, oh, well, I'm taking these many clients.
I don't care how much anyone makes in top line revenue.
Nah, it's all profit. That's all that matters. Like, that is the only thing I care about in our business, is what is the profit after expenses.
We're talking about like financially. That is not the only thing he cares about.
Oh, yeah. Obviously.
If we're talking like,
obviously, bigger picture, I'm talking, if I'm looking at the financials of our business or any business,
it should be profiting.
100%.
If you're not profiting,
absolutely.
reevaluate your
and
prices.
your profit margin, especially for like a service-based business where you're, as a lash artist, you are not only like the owner of the business, but you're also the employee in the business. And so you should be paying yourself a salary, quote unquote, as the employee. And then you should also be taking profit from the business as its owner. So you should be getting paid more than what you would be getting paid as like an employed lash artist, because you are also the owner of this company. You're taking on the risk of owning a company. You shouldn't be doing it for like pennies. Like, the way I think for most lash artists, like, your expenses should be like 20% of what your fills and full sets cost. Like, if you're doing a full set, or let's say you're doing a fill, because most people do more fills. If you're charging, for easy math, let's say it's $100 a fill, your expenses on that fill should be $20, and that should include that portion of the rent for like that hour that you were in there. Like, break your rent down for like, what are you paying per client you take in a month in rent? Are you paying, so like, say you are doing 100 clients a month and your rent is $1,000 a month. So if you're doing $1,000 a month, 100 clients a month, that means your rent per client is $10. Then how much are you paying in products per client? Well, then you're paying
X amount in taxes.
Yeah, are you paying $10 per client in product? Then you're at 20%. Generally, taxes I would put on top of that.
Yeah.
So like 20% is your fixed and relative expenses for providing the service. And then from that 80%, which a lot of people, I think when they hear that, they're like, well, 80% profit, that's a lot. It's really not, because you take out of that 80%, you take out taxes, you take out all the other like little things that come along with running a business, like licensing and like
insurance,
all those insurance, like all that stuff comes out. You need to be at least, like, when your client is out the door, you need to have not paid more than like 20% of what you charge them in order for it to really make sense. And if you're not at that point yet, totally fine, but you should be working towards where you can get there.
Yeah.
Happy birthday!